Make Walters your spot for this NFL season. All indoor TVs are preset and are first come, first serve. They're proud to show every NFL game every week.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Young waiting. Nunez does not run. Pitch launched in the air, left field. Back goes Baldwin to the warning track. See you later. Jacob Young has tied this game with just his second home run of the season. Nationals 4, White Sox 4. Of all people, Jacob Young, a soaring drive to left field, ties this one up.
Got James on a 1-6-3 double play last night.
And Wood, deep to left. See you later.
Number 31, your Nats are on top.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We are down to the final game of the Nationals 2025 season. The penultimate game was a win, a 6-5 win over the Chicago White Sox at Nationals Park on Saturday in Game 2 of a 3-game series. This was a game in which the Nats overcame a 4-2 7th-inning deficit. This was a game in which each of the Nats' starting outfielders in the game, James Wood, Daylen Lile, and Jacob Young, homered. This was a game for which the start was delayed for 40 minutes due to rain. And so the Nats enter the final day of MLB's 2025 regular season 66-95. The three things with that record that have been in effect for weeks now will remain in effect for the conclusion of the season. Worst record in the National League East, second worst record in the National League, third worst record in the majors. The same for the White Sox in terms of them having the worst record in the American League. That mark now is 59 and 102. 161 games down, 1 to go. It is great to have you with us. We appreciate you being with us. You on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify can both rate the podcast and write reviews of the podcast. 5-star ratings are greatly appreciated. Positive reviews are greatly appreciated. These things do help us out a lot. We thank you very much for doing them. The Nats on Saturday afternoon announced their 2025 award winners as voted by members of the media. No surprises. Nats Player of the Year, left fielder James Wood. Nats Pitcher of the Year, starter Mackenzie Gore. Nats Good Guy Award winner, first baseman Josh Bell. And the Nats on Saturday afternoon paid tribute to their longtime television play-by-play announcer, MASN's Bob Carpenter, who is retiring. The Nats on Saturday afternoon conducted a pregame ceremony for Bob on what was billed as See You Later Day. The ceremony did have to be moved inside due to rain, but the ceremony really nice, very well done. Bob Carpenter has been the TV play-by-play voice of the Nats for 20 seasons, 2006 through 2025, a tremendous run. Bob is a pro's pro. He is what you call a professional sports announcer. Has called a bunch of different sports on TV, worked for ESPN for years, has been an announcer for multiple other MLB teams beyond the Nats, St. Louis, Texas, the Mets, the Minnesota Twins. And Bob is widely regarded as a really good person. And Mark, having worked with Bob for years, I know you know that very well, that this is not just a good broadcaster, but this is a good dude.
100%, Al. And if you watched the ceremony, and if you didn't get a chance to watch it live on MASN, go to my Twitter account, go to the YouTube MASN Nationals page. They've got the full thing. I think it's 27 minutes up there. It's really worth watching, both to see Bob and his emotions, to hear what Kevin Franzen, Dan Kolko, Ryan Zimmerman all said, but really to see the montage of videos that they got from some pretty prominent people in the broadcasting and sports world who all wanted to share their gratitude with Bob. We're talking about the likes of Lee Corso, who Bob actually worked with at ESPN on the original College Game Day so many years ago. Joe Buck, who Bob knew as a young kid because he worked with his father, Jack Buck, with the Cardinals. Ozzie Smith, Cardinal legend, of course. Johnny Holiday, local legend, who worked with him for all those years as the MASN pregame host. You really come to appreciate just how significant of a broadcaster Bob has been, not just in DC, but around the country, and how good of a person and how well liked he is across the board from everyone. You know, I grew up, I think you probably around the same time, kind of knew who he was from watching games on ESPN. He'd pop on a Wednesday night game from wherever. He called some World Cup matches in 1994, college games here and there. So I sort of knew who he was when he got the Nats job 20 years ago. To then get to know him as I have and be able to call him a friend over the last 2 decades has really been something special. And he pointed it out. He understands it completely, that you do that for 20 seasons, calling games for one team. And that's why it's so much more special to him, to this part of his career, than the earlier part of his career. You develop a connection with the fan base. You're in their homes every single night for 20 years. And he never took that relationship for granted. He knew that it took a few years to win everyone over. This guy from St. Louis who was coming into DC. And the way the fan base embraced him over the years, I know it means so much to him. This weekend has been so special for him. I can only imagine what he's going to be feeling on Sunday as he calls that final inning in the 9th and signs off for the final time. I have a hunch. He says he's not going to rehearse it in advance, but I have a hunch what his final 3 words are going to be on the air. If you've listened to him at all, I think you know how that's going to go. I'm just really glad for him. And he mentioned this as well. In a business where very often you're told after the fact that you've done your last broadcast, he got to decide when he was going to do it. It's a real credit to him and, frankly, to the Nationals for letting him do this season.
And in a business filled with plenty of ego and plenty of diva behavior, and you know that, and I know that, and I'm sure plenty of people listening know that, he is sans diva behavior. You know, I'm sure he has an ego. You have to have an ego to do this, to be honest with you. But in terms of him being someone who is all about him or thinks that, you know, he walks on water, like, you never get that sense with Bob Carpenter. Like, a genuinely nice person. How he is on TV is how he is in real life. And I think that that's, you know, one of the best things you can say about someone like that. It is interesting with his career because prior to coming to the Nats, he'd had a very accomplished career, but you didn't necessarily associate him with any one thing or team. And now you associate him with the Nats. And when you think about Washington, D.C. area sports history, and you think about broadcasters associated with teams, you know, whether it is, you know, a Frank Herzog with the Redskins or a Ron Weber with the Capitals or, you know, whoever you want to identify, Bob Carpenter is associated with the Nationals. And I'd say the same thing about Charlie Slows and Dave Jagler. But in terms of television, Bob Carpenter is the first lengthy television voice of the Nats. That's a very special thing. And there will be big shoes to fill for whoever succeeds him as the television voice of the Nats.
100%. We're still waiting to find out who that's going to be. As we all know, we're also still waiting to find out on what network the Nationals will be broadcast in 2026. I have a vested interest in that myself, so I'll just stay out of that topic for now. But what you just said, I think what's so impressive about this, and Bob, you know, told me this back in March when we were discussing his pending retirement, totally unexpected. As you said, he was 52 years old when he got this job with a long and impressive broadcast career, calling games for the Cardinals, the Mets, the Rangers, and all the ESPN work that he had done. He never in a million years saw himself moving to an East Coast city and having a long career where all of a sudden he would be identified with another franchise, let alone a franchise in Washington, D.C., which for much of his career didn't even exist in that city or with that name. And so he never set out to do that. And somewhere along the way, he realized that that is what had happened. And I know that that meant so much to him as somebody who had done a lot of national broadcasts and felt very close to his hometown St. Louis Cardinals, who he did get to call games for a number of years. He truly, at the end of all this, feels like he belongs to Washington, D.C. more than any other town. He never saw that coming, but he 100% embraces it. And I know he gets some grief sometimes. People tease him about still caring about the Cardinals and bleeding Cardinal red. And he says, honestly, I don't. I've been bleeding Nationals red, white, and blue for a long time. It's a very nice story for somebody who, you know, career highlight ends up coming on the second half of his career as opposed to the first half of it.
Well, as we know, the signature call of Bob Carpenter is his home run call, see you later. And that call is getting a workout during this Nationals season-ending series against the White Sox. 6 homers for the Nats in game 1 of this series, which was, yes, a 10-9 Nats loss on Friday evening, and 3 more homers for the Nats in this 6-5 win over the White Sox on Saturday. The Nats in this game, 6 runs, 10 hits, 4 walks, just 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position, but that doesn't matter as much when 3 of your 10 hits are homers, and you also smash a couple of doubles. So to go with 5 singles, the Nats did strike out 12 times. But again, the home run very much in effect. Daylen Lile, surprise, surprise, homering again. He is the Nats starting right fielder and number 4 batter, 2 for 3 with a 2-run homer, a single, and a walk. Lile in a Nats 2-run 4th, a 1-out 2-run homer to right center field to cut the Nats deficit to 4-2. James Wood homered. He is the Nats starting left fielder and number 1 batter, 3 for 5 with a solo homer, an RBI single, and another single. Did strike out twice, but Wood in a Nats 3-run 7th, a 1-out opposite field solo homer to left center field for a 5-4 Nats lead. And this was some shot, a projected 419 feet per Statcast. And Jacob Young homered in this game. He is the Nats starting center fielder and number 9 batter, 1 for 3 with a 2-run homer, a walk, and an outfield assist. Young in a Nats 3-run 7th, a 1-out full count 2-run homer to left field to tie the game at 4. We get it. The White Sox are a really bad team. But man, 9 homers for the Nats over these first 2 games. 3 really impressive homers in this game. That was some shot by James Wood. So impressive.
Opposite field off a lefty in the rain, and like not just a light rain. It really started coming down as he was preparing for that at bat. That was classic James Wood right there. And boy, what a difference this last week has made, I think, in terms of how we're viewing the way his season is ending. Obviously, he went through a long, 2.5 month stretch there where it was not going for him. But I do think from a morale standpoint, to finish the way he has here with 4 homers over the last week, still more potentially to come on Sunday, I think that's going to do a lot for him. He even admitted it himself that it does leave a much better taste in his mouth. And the style of swing has been much better. It's closed front shoulder, closed front hip, driving the ball to left center field. That's who he's supposed to be and who he can be at his best. So that's been hugely encouraging to see him do that. And just the team as a whole. You mentioned the 6 homers on Friday night. Remember, they had 3 in the final game in Atlanta. That's 12 home runs in their last 3 games. That gets them up to 161 for the season. They were at 135, worst in the majors last year. So you want more improvement than that? Yes. But what we have seen, I think, does offer you a glimpse that this can be a much more power-proven lineup top to bottom than we have seen for the better part of the last several years, because so many of the guys doing it are the young guys. You want to see more of it. You want to see more consistency of it. But I do think you're going to get to the end of this season and say it was such a priority coming into the year to improve their power production. Maybe it wasn't a straight line to get there. Maybe it still could have been better than the final numbers, but you will have seen legitimate power production and improvement from there, and especially from young guys who should be a part of this moving forward.
The homers are up, as we have discussed. A lot of this is coming in the dead portion of the season, the garbage time portion of the season, but the homers are up, and that's what we wanted to see, and that is certainly good to see. With James Wood, there was the threat, there was the fear that the OPS might dip down into the 700s. That's not happening. The OPS now at 828, 31 home runs for James Wood, his slash line. Batting average 257, on base percentage 351, slugging percentage 477. Hey, are you a law firm partner or associate looking to transition to a new firm because of compensation?
Or you're in a Luis Garcia Jr. type situation. Your firm's thinking about moving you from second base to first base, but you're still able to crush 3 homers against the south side of Chicago.
If this sounds like you should explore the lateral market and give Mason Kalfas a call. Mason is the top legal recruiter in the Washington, D.C. area. He has been a Nats Chat podcast advertiser since the beginning of our show. Mason will work with you to create a marketing and business plan to pitch to new firms and dramatically increase your compensation and or day-to-day happiness in your new job. Mason has placed partners and associates in just about every large law firm in D.C. and New York, and he can provide plenty of testimonials testimonials from candidates he has placed on the outstanding service that they received. You need a strong advocate in your corner to find the best law firm out there for your future career. Call Mason Kalfas today, 202-486-3535.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Hand-picked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
Imagine if today was the day your idea changed someone's life. Imagine if you could help someone pay for college, help your community build a new playground, or help a child make it to that dream competition. With GoFundMe, it's all possible. GoFundMe is the world's #1 fundraising platform trusted by over 190 million people. Every week, ordinary people meet their goals and do extraordinary things. Your ideas matter. GoFundMe isn't just for emergencies. Want to raise money for your kid's soccer team or raise funds for a small business, a creative project, or event? GoFundMe helps you turn ideas into reality. And help adds up. Fundraisers you start for someone else raise up to 5 times more. So think right now, who could use your help? Change rarely comes from waiting. It comes from someone deciding, today I'll start. Don't wait for someone else to bring change. Today, start your fundraiser in just minutes at GoFundMe.com. That's GoFundMe.com to start your fundraiser. GoFundMe.com. This is a commercial message brought to you by GoFundMe.
Here's the set and the 0-1. Swinging a fly ball, well hit right center field. Chasing back Fletcher on the go to the warning track, looking up, and this one is off the top of the wall. And see you later. It is gone. Lile realizes it. He stops at second. That one cleared the wall. A 2-run homer for Daylen Lile, his 9th. That cuts the White Sox lead in half. It's 4-2.
Daylen Lile, at this point, I don't know what else there is to say in terms of the superlatives for this month of September that he's having. His slash line for this month now is up to a .404 batting average, a .454 on base percentage, a .798 slugging percentage. As I mentioned on the last installment of the podcast, his candidacy for National League Rookie of the Year now is very legitimate, very viable. Now, I during the game did a deep dive on Lyle's stats, and I won't bombard people with everything, but there are 2 things that are going to really work against him winning National League Rookie of the Year. One is the lack of volume of work. The other thing is the defense. His advanced defensive stats are woeful, okay? Like, they're not just bad, they are atrocious. And I don't know if every voter values defense as much as maybe defense should be valued, but if you do value defense, those advanced defensive stats are going to work against Lile. Offensively, you could argue he should win National League Rookie of the Year, but if defense is taken into the equation by enough voters, that's going to be a problem, I think, for Daylen Lile.
Well, I will tell you and tell everyone who's listening here, I don't think that I've made this public before. I have a Rookie of the Year vote this year, as a matter of fact. Now, I'm not allowed to reveal who I am voting for until the results come out, and that won't be until November. But I will say, and I always do this anyways, but especially this year, I am waiting until it's all over and said and done before I submit that ballot, because I want to see where Lile ends up, where everybody else ends up, and how that stacks up, because every game counts as much in the end as any other one. But as I was putting together my preliminary list of candidates for it, I do look at the full picture. It's not just offense, it's defense. I look at WAR, all those kinds of things. And his defensive numbers really stand out in a bad way compared to everyone else. And so I would think the top contenders, and again, I haven't decided this, and I haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to rank everyone. I would think the top 3 going into the final day on Sunday are Drake Baldwin, the catcher of the Braves, who has the most at bats and plate appearances, hit 19 homers and put up good numbers and has solid defensive numbers too. Cade Horton, pitcher for the Cubs, who has had a really strong second half in helping that team reach the playoffs. Going to have a sub-3 ERA, made 22 starts, over 100 innings pitched, a whip right around 1. So he's going to be in the conversation. And Daylen Lile deserves to be in the conversation. Now, he's taken about 90 fewer plate appearances than Baldwin, but he's outranking him in batting average, on base, slugging, OPS. Baldwin has the volume numbers because of those extra 90 plate appearances, but Lyle has him pretty easily beat in all the rate categories. Defense does play a role in this. The amount of time you played does play a role in it. I think when it comes to Rookie of the Year, yeah, you can win it playing only half a season, but if you're going up against guys who played a full big league season, you better have outstanding numbers that can overcome the lack of playing time. I think he absolutely deserves to be in the conversation. He is very much in my mind in the conversation as I make my final decision on it. But the things you point out, lack of playing time compared to some of the others, and the defensive issues bring some of the numbers down. If he doesn't win it, those are probably the reasons. If he had the same amount of games played as Baldwin, if the defense was just okay and not that bad, it might not even be a question that he'd be the choice. But because of those, it is much more of a conversation.
Yeah, to me, offense does matter more than defense, but defense does matter. And if you're really bad defensively, that's a problem. Like, that should count in something like an award. But, just the fact that he could be and is likely to be one of the 3 finalists for the award, I think is a really cool thing. And I like how MLB does this now, to where you get the announcement of the 3 finalists for each award. And then later on, I guess a week or two later, whatever it is, you get the announcement of the recipients of the awards. And so if Lyle can at least be a finalist, which he should be, that's nice. And I think there's value in that if that ends up being the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to keep this in mind, no Nationals player rookie has received just 1 vote for Rookie of the Year since Victor Robles in 2019. And no Nationals player has received any kind of votes for any of the BBWA awards since Juan Soto when he finished runner-up for MVP in 2021. It's been a long time coming for anybody on this team to play at a level that merited any kind of consideration for these major awards.
Well, that says something about drafting and player development now, doesn't it? James Wood is at 218 strikeouts, 5 away from the all-time record of 223. So look, is it possible he ties it? Yes. Is it probable? No. So, I wouldn't lose sleep over this. Knock on wood, no pun intended. As long as he doesn't have a disastrous game 162, James Wood should not be breaking that record. I also want to mention this. Josh Bell on Saturday as the Nats starting DH and number 3 batter went 2 for 3 with 2 doubles and a walk. Josh Bell's OPS is up to 751, 1 point behind the OPS of CJ Abrams, who is at 752. It's hard to believe, and yet it is true. Josh Bell is on the doorstep of finishing this season with a higher OPS than CJ Abrams. Let that sink in, given all that has happened in this national season.
It's why they play 162 and they all count the same. And you look it up at the end and that will tell you what their season was. And yes, there is context to it. When you do it in September of a lost season, maybe it doesn't mean as much. But ultimately, and Ryan Zimmerman used to say this all the time, says, you always get to your level in the end. The proven players will get to where they're supposed to be at season's end. And he saw that happen to him several times over his career. Who would I say had the better season? I think it's still CJ Abrams, but I give a lot of credit to Josh Bell for how he turned it around after the awful first 2 months. And for a guy who probably was having some doubts and questions about what his future was in the major leagues, I don't think there should be any doubt about that now. Now, I don't know what teams are going to be in the running, what they're looking for, how much they're going to pay him, but you could do a lot worse than Josh Bell as your DH/first baseman, at least part of a lefty-righty combo. It has been very nice to see. And as you've pointed out, supremely good person, clubhouse leader as well. He won the Media Good Guy Award for the second time in his Nats career. It was 4 years ago that he won it in his first stint here. You could tell that first half of the season was weighing on him. He has been in a much better mood. He has felt much more like himself over the second half, even as the season for the team, went south.
It's funny. I was sitting at my kitchen table recently, and, we have two small kids, so our kitchen table is filled with all kinds of stuff. But they like to go to the library. And while I was eating, I stumbled across something on the kitchen table. It was like this postcard from the library about the Josh Bell reading program that he's been a part of for years. And it just was a reminder of like, you know what? This is a good dude. Like that he does the work that he does, helping kids read, encouraging kids to read. Like, again, having two small kids, like I have an appreciation for that I, wouldn't otherwise have. And I was like, wow, good for Josh Bell for being that kind of person. But yeah, I mean, let's make this clear. Going into Saturday, if you go by Baseball Reference WAR, CJ Abrams 3.5, Josh Bell 0.6. So, we do need to acknowledge that. Like, Abrams does things that Josh Bell does not. But I do find that just really funny that Bell, this tear that he is on, has got the OPS up to nearly what Abrams' OPS is at. So Jake Irvin was the National starting pitcher in this game on Saturday. And man, if there is such a thing as a typical Jake Irvin 2025 start, to me, we had that in this game. 4 runs in 6 innings. Irvin ate up innings, give him credit for that, but he gave up 4 runs. The final line works out to an ERA of 6. He gave up 6 hits, which were 2 home runs, a double, and 3 singles. He did have 6 strikeouts versus 1 walk. That was good. And he did throw a lot of strikes, 73 pitches, 52 strikes, just 21 balls. But, I had this thought. I'm sure plenty of people had this thought watching this game. Is this Irvin's final start as a member of the Nationals rotation, or is there a legitimate shot at him again being in the Nats rotation next season? It has been a really bad season for Jake Irvin. He does bring some value from a standpoint of consuming innings, and he has been healthy, knock on wood. But, have we seen enough to see that there just isn't enough upside worth pursuing anymore with him as a starting pitcher? That among the many things to be decided with Paul Taboni running Nats baseball operations.
So he finishes the year with a 5.70 ERA. That is perfectly tied with Mitchell Parker for the highest ERA among all qualified starters in the majors. Now, it's possible we see Parker in relief on Sunday. Brad Lord's going to get the start. Maybe Parker gets in there in a relief role, so he could change some things there. But Irvin ends with a 5.70 ERA. And with 2 more home runs surrendered, that's 38 for the season, matching Josiah Gray's single-season club record. It is basically impossible to categorize a season in which you had a 5.70 ERA and tied the club record for home runs allowed as anything other than awful. I'm sorry, you just can't do that in any way. Now, Irvin himself afterwards was really talking about his commitment to getting better and believing that he can and should be a big part of this moving forward. Now, I thought this was the interesting quote from him. He said, "I want to come back next year and be a guy that doesn't just eat innings. I want to throw a lot of innings and to do it with quality. I know that I can still be an ace, and that's the goal." Well, let's not talk about number 1 starter. Let's talk about number 4 or 5 starter at this point. But I appreciate the confidence or the goal setting in his mind. But I think the first part of that is the important thing. He knows he's an innings eater, and he does take pride in that, and there is value in that. But you got to be producing a lot more quality innings than he has. And this start was the perfect summation of it. He pitched 6 innings. 5 of them were scoreless. But the other one, 4 runs scored, and it was because of 2 home runs. He's got to eliminate those killer mistakes. If he can do that, there is a chance for him to be effective. We have seen him do it at this level before. But if I'm Paul Taboni and I'm mapping out my rotation plans for 2026, I think Irvin is certainly part of the group coming to camp competing for a job, but he should not be assured of anything. He should have to compete with several others, I would think, for maybe 1 or 2 spots in the opening day rotation. You want him to have to go in with that mindset of having to compete and not just assuming anything is his for the taking. So there's a lot of work for him to do this winter. There is potential there, I do believe. I think he has qualities that should provide value to a major league rotation, but he's got to learn how to show that all the time, how to avoid the blow-up innings and produce quality innings, as he said, not just total innings.
Man, it so feels like 90% of the runs given up by Jake Irvin have come in 10% of the innings, because in so many of the starts, this has been the story, right? That one bad inning. If not for inning X, Jake Irvin would have had a good outing. And of course, the problem is you can't just remove inning X, like inning X does count. And yeah, good for him for acknowledging that it's not just about eating innings, it's about quality innings. You know, if you eat a lot of innings, that's nice. But if the eating of the innings gives you indigestion, that's not so nice. And that's what's happened with Jake Irvin way too often this season.
Hey, Nats Chat, Tim Shover's here to tell you about Babbel. Tough loss for the Nationals on Friday night. Here was Jose A. Ferrer after his blown save.
Ya me lo habían acordado al principio, si haciendo carrera entraba como quiera el juego en el noveno. Y los muchachos remontaron, nos subimos arriba y traté de dar lo mejor de mí. Y las cosas no salieron como se quería.
If you want to get better at understanding Jose during the offseason so that next spring you won't need to wait for that translator to chime in, then check out Babbel. Babbel's tips and tools for learning a new language are approachable and accessible. It's like having a private tutor in your pocket. Babbel offers the opportunity to practice conversation skills right away in speech recognition to make sure you're getting the pronunciation just right. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/natchat. That's spelled BABBEL.com/natchat. It went up from 50 to 55%. Babbel.com/natchat. That's spelled BABBEL.com/natchat.
Imagine if today was the day your idea changed someone's life. Imagine if you could help someone pay for college, help your community build a new playground, or help a child make it to that dream competition. With GoFundMe, it's all possible. GoFundMe is the world's #1 fundraising platform trusted by over 190 million people. Every week, ordinary people meet their goals and do extraordinary things. Your ideas matter. GoFundMe isn't just for emergencies. Want to raise money for your kid's soccer team or raise funds for a small business, a creative project, or event? GoFundMe helps you turn ideas into reality. And help adds up. Fundraisers you start for someone else raise up to 5 times more. So think right now, who could use your help? Change rarely comes from waiting. It comes from someone deciding, today I'll start. Don't wait for someone else to bring change. Today, start your fundraiser in just minutes at GoFundMe.com. That's GoFundMe.com to start your fundraiser. GoFundMe.com. This is a commercial message brought to you by GoFundMe.
0-2 on my draw. Here's the pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. Elevated the fastball at 100 miles an hour. And Mindroff tried to hold. He could not. A Curly W's in the books. Jose Ferrer gets it done with save number 11. And Julian Fernandez pitched to score in the 7th inning. Gets his first Major League win. A Curly W in the books. The final score, the Washington Nationals 6. The Chicago White Sox 5.
The Nats bullpen in this 6-5 win over the White Sox on Saturday. 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 1 run in 3 innings, but Jose A. Ferrer had another rough outing. Julian Fernandez, a perfect top of the 7th with 2 swinging strikeouts. Connor Pilkington, 2/3 of a scoreless inning. Clayton Beeter faced 1 batter and got 1 out. But Jose A. Ferrer, who is on fumes right now, I think that's become crystal clear. He off struggling in the 10-9 loss to the White Sox on Friday evening. Allowed 1 run in 1 inning on Saturday, but he did get the save. I give him credit. Top of the 9th, he let a run on 3 singles into wild pitch. And it's not like he got battered around the ballpark, okay? But the wild pitch happened. And he did generate 3 swinging strikeouts. So that is good. And, even through these struggles, we've seen him continue to generate strikeouts. That is good. But he is nowhere near as automatic as he had been. And I've got to think that he's just, running on close to empty at this point with how much he has been used here in recent weeks.
100%. And the good news, I suppose, is he will not be pitching in Sunday's finale. Miguel Cairo joked that Ferrer can show up in his pajamas for the finale. He will not be appearing in that game because he is on fumes. He has thrown his last pitch for 2025. I will say in this case, the conditions were awful for the final couple innings of this game. It was so wet out there. The rain was still coming down. This was a case where the umpires were like, let's just try to get this thing over with. We don't want to go into a delay. But it was sloppy. I can only imagine what it's like trying to throw a baseball with that kind of grip. I'm sure it had something to do with the wild pitch, the landing area on the mound. None of that had to be pleasant at all for him. And to his credit, He danced the tightrope. He got into major trouble. The tying run was on third base, and he got out of it because he was able to have the swing and miss stuff. So overall, an encouraging season for him. There's a lot to like about what he can be, but consistency is the name of the game. It's that way for almost all relievers. The ones who can do it consistently are the ones who end up having really good seasons and really good careers. And it's hard to do that in that role. That's the challenge now for him moving forward and, come into next year strong and ready to handle the workload because it is a lot, and if you want to get to where you ultimately want this team to be, you're pitching not just through September, but you're going to pitch into October as well. And you better still have something in the tank for that. So now that he got this experience out of the way, can he take that next step, both from a physical standpoint, emotional standpoint, and a consistency standpoint that can allow him to be a top high leverage reliever on a good team in the future?
So, game 162, Sunday afternoon, 3:05, Nationals and the White Sox at Nationals Park. Brad Lord will be the Nats starting pitcher. The Nats hiring of Paul Taboni to run baseball operations still has not been officially made. There still has not been word on whether Mike DeBartolo is staying in a role of general manager under Taboni. And I suppose it's possible, maybe even probable, that we have nothing official through the end of the regular season here, that we might not get an announcement till early next week.
The sense I get is that it is going to be a little while for that formal announcement. Maybe there'll be some other news that breaks as far as who the GM is or what DeBartolo's future is. Maybe we'll get that on Sunday. At this point, we don't have that yet. I think you have to remember they selected Taboni the other day. They had to work out the details of his deal, his contract, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of things for him to figure out. And probably tops on that list is who's my GM. And maybe he wanted to talk to several people. I really don't know. I'll be very interested to hear from him eventually about what that process was like. There's a lot of people in this organization who come in on Sunday not knowing if it's their final game working for the Washington Nationals across all different parts of the organization. I feel for them. It's a tough spot to be in. I do believe some of them will be back in whatever capacities, but it's a tough business, and there's nothing harder in the business than heading home for the winter, not knowing where you're going to be employed or whether you're going to be employed for the following season. So my heart goes out to all of them because I know that's a difficult position to be in, saying goodbye to everyone.
You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. Hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website you could check out too, natschatpodcast.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Speaking of the radio, Nats Chat, this podcast is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area. And on this Sunday morning, a special start time of 8 on Priority Sports Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
On a pitch up, Zimmerman, high in the air, right field, see you later! He's done it 3 times in a row!
Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.